Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual Trek Con Part 2 with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We have three very special guests. We have Mr. Michael Harney from Orange is the New Black and various other awesome projects. You know and love, of course, Mr. Bob Picardo from Voyager, also from Stargate. He also knows how to do the Star Trek whooshing doors. And Mr. Marc Zicree, writer and creator of Space Command. How you guys doing?
Great.
Very well.
Awesome. So let's first start off very quickly, because we just got a little piece of knowledge that I really want to hear a little bit more about. Bob, you have a new YouTube channel. I didn't know this. I don't think any of us knew. Can you tell us?
Yes, well, I have two grown daughters, first of all, that are both in post-production. One is an editor, the other one works in visual effects and dabbles in motion graphics. So it's been a family affair. My daughter in visual effects made the little graphics for the front, top and tail of the videos, and my other daughter edits them and gives me a very good family rate, by the way. And I've just been cranking out videos. Many of them I act with an actor that I've always admired, me. I played multiple characters in them because there's no one else to act with, and I can't infect myself, apparently. So a lot of them are with an imaginary Italian cousin of mine who fashions himself the world's oldest and greatest lover. He is the leading authority on sex. His name is Alfonso. And I play that character, and I play myself in videos with him. We have dinner together. We sometimes have competing stories about events where none of our facts agree. Just a lot of fun. But my favorite video I've made is an homage to my artificial intelligence colleague from the next generation. It's a lament, a musical lament, shot like a film noir movie in the 50s, called "Why Was I Not Born Brent Spiner?" And I think I'm proudest of that. And Brent was the first out of the box to tell me he loved it, so I know I didn't hurt anybody's feelings.
What is the YouTube channel's name?
I don't know. It's the Robert Picardo channel. But I mean, if you go to my Instagram, you can click on the link in the bio. So if you go to Robert_Picardo, then you can click. And as I said, most of them are making fun of me. In fact, I think pretty much all of them are making fun of me, which is how I got my children on board.
Sirach, we didn't know he'd bring so many jokes, did we?
Oh, he's got jokes. He's got jokes.
Well, we'll definitely include that in the description box, all the links and all the pertinent information. That is really cool. We had no idea. Michael, you are unable to disclose what you are currently working on, but you can disclose how you're doing, though. How is everything? How's life?
Everything's good. Yeah, I just did a couple of seasons of Blue Book for the History Channel, and doing some writing. I'm excited to be working with Marc. Things are good, man. You know, it's very interesting working on a project during the quarantine. You know, we did a 14-day quarantine. And it's kind of like being in a high-end federal joint, you know. Really, it's very, very interesting, you know, dealing with having to be supervised everywhere you go, and in order to protect the integrity of the production.
Wow.
So it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I think it's a very pointed time in history. So. I've actually used the term that feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. So maybe Marc can comment a little bit more on that.
Yeah, don't get Sirach and Marc started on the Twilight Zone. They're the two biggest fans. Right, Sirach? You said that's your #1 fandom, right?
Yeah, Twilight Zone is my #1. That's what they, you know, when they asked me, do you ever watch Star Trek? I think that was a question that came up in the auditions when I was auditioning for the role of Jake. And I said, not really, but I know a lot about Twilight Zone. Definitely my favorite show. And I think it's like the blueprint for very well-written sci-fi shows.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rod was the inspiration for all of us who are show creators. I mean, if you talk to David Chase or Matt Weiner. I mean, even guys who aren't doing science fiction, Rod is the icon. He's definitely the model, because prior to that, producers ran television and the writers were subordinate. And Rod was really the first showrunner where the writer ran the show, and he did such a brilliant job of it. And I'm actually working on a new Serling project that I can't go into much detail about, but it's incredibly cool, and I'm sure you'll really like it, Sirach. So and perhaps we'll be in it. We'll talk. So
Ooh.
Wow, that would be a dream.
yeah, it'd be super fun. So great.
So we're all gathered here together to discuss a project called Space Command.
Yes.
This has been Marc Zicree's brainchild for many, many years. Michael, you and Bob really seem to have helped bring it to life. I know, Bob, you did some amazing scenes with Mr. Doug Jones, which is actually where I met Doug. You guys just worked together so well, and it was one of those things where, as a fan, being able to see it, up close and personal on set, I didn't want it to end. I wanted the two of you to just keep working together in future episodes or future productions, or just keep working together. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like working with Doug Jones? Or maybe I'm way off. Maybe you're like, dude, it was just a job. I don't even know the guy. He was fine.
Doug and I had met years ago on an episode of The Outer Limits, where he played this sort of alien that was in a kind of a deep sleep situation, I guess. And I was a what's the word? I guess I was somebody who wanted to make this discovery and release it to the world, in order to make money and fame, and acted recklessly, and all hell breaks loose, I think is what it was. But anyway, I liked Doug back then, didn't see him for a number of years, but always enjoyed his work. I was amazed at his work in the intervening years. And then when we met to work together on Space Command, I could simply say that he's the kind of actor that makes you better, because he's so real that you can have no artifice yourself. You just peel everything away. I like to kid around a lot and joke a lot, and because I have a glib streak as a human being or as a personality, I'm always careful to try to put that aside in my work, unless it suits the character, or suits the tone or nature of the material. But Doug is just so, to the bone real, and one of the great listeners that I've ever worked with, that he just makes you better. So I would drop anything to work with him again, and hope that I'll be doing that in the future.
I had a question really quickly before you go. Sorry to interrupt you, Brian.
No, please.
Robert, the character that you play is a religious character, a highly religious character. Is that the first time that you delve into that kind of a role, and somebody who was, where faith was so important to who they were?
No, it's a great question, and I actually have played a number of over the years. And in the last, say, 3 years, I think I've played Catholic priests 2 or 3 times, and Jewish rabbis 2 or 3 times. So I'm completely ecumenical in my role choices. Right. I actually like playing people of faith, and I enjoy it, whether it's often because in the context of most, often there's a certain amount of conflict in the person. They're having a crisis of faith, which is what made the role particularly interesting. But it is the first time I played a Muslim, which was great. I had to be taught a little bit. We had to have we had a gentleman of that faith come and put me, teach me about praying, and how you pray, how you prayed, and not only how many times a day, but the physical posture on the rug, and even though you only see the sort of the beginning and the end, I think, of my actual prayer at different points in the movie, it's when you're playing a character of faith, and I consider myself a person of faith, that part is the same. It's the same God, and it's the same, and And whether you believe as Jesus as the Messiah or just a great prophet, we're always dealing with a God and various very influential humans that were prophets to whatever their particular faith that grew up over generations became. So I enjoy playing the character, a person of faith, but it was particularly interesting because he's having a crisis ever since he lost his wife, who was being heroic in trying to save other people in a crisis, and she died so tragically, and blames himself for not having been able to save her. Or you're not even sure if he's saying, I should have died with her, but of course they had a son that he had to raise. So he's got a certain amount of guilt and tremendous rage, I think, against his God. But he still keeps praying, hoping, I think, that he's going to hear the voice again, because he hasn't heard. He said, I say in the movie, God has been silent since my wife died. The voice of God has been silent in me, which implies that he used to hear or felt that he heard God's voice in his life. It's a very tragic man, a man who's been, so damaged by this tragedy in his life, and yet he's still kind of going through the motions and half alive. And then he becomes absorbed in this other mission regarding saving Doug's character, who is a synth, an artificial intelligence character who was designed to be just sort of a work drone. But it deals with all the same issues that we dealt with in Star Trek, but it's from the other side of the table now, because instead of being the artificial intelligence fighting for his own entitlement as a fully formed individual, now I'm listening to another character explain that to me. So for many reasons, it was the same, but very, very different from anything I've done before. And that's what made it interesting to work on.
Mark.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, finish up.
I just wanted to ask Mark where the impetus for the idea is to introduce Islam into a science fiction story. And, that's kind of an original thought.
It's great too, Sirach. You're asking the questions that I was going to ask anyway, so this is perfect. I'm going to go take a nap. This is great.
Ryan from this coast, and I realized that actually I've worked with all of you as actors because I came up with Far Beyond the Stars as well, and there are two things that run through pretty much my body of work, and I think one of the reasons why Twilight Zone spoke so strongly to me when I was in my early 20s and wrote The Companion. I'm very interested in compassion as an active force in the world. That compassion can heal us, can bind us, can make love is an active power in the world. That's a counterweight against the evil, against the violence, against the brutality. And so when Bob was talking about the psychic wound he has from the loss of his wife as a character, his showing compassion to Doug's character and saving him is what starts to heal his heart in a certain way, because now he can take action and he can save someone else where he couldn't save his wife. And that's very meaningful. And in terms of him being a Muslim, first of all, I think that Muslims are treated very badly in American media in general. Either they're, they're either the villain, or they're, except in comedy shows, they're kind of like not major characters in a very concrete way. And so I very much wanted to have a Muslim character. I have one of my friends is actually a guy named Yusuf Sikander from Afghanistan, and so I basically named Bob's character Yusuf and had my friend come to the set to teach Bob about how to pray and all that stuff, as Bob was mentioning. But I'm always very interested in the people you can do anything to because they don't count. And whether that's Black people, whether that's Muslims, whether that's in my family, I'm Jewish, so if my grandfather hadn't left Poland when he did, my mother and my entire family would have been exterminated before I was ever around. And so all of this stuff it's always the people who, shit can be done to, and I'm very interested in saying, no, we have to reach across boundaries and barriers. We must view each other first as human, and secondly, as our equals, as people. Empathy is a great, great power in the world, and it must be exercised. Otherwise, I'm I'm preaching to the choir, but it's I think that's the only thing that can save us. And the more we have empathy, people. Sometimes you play that game where it's like, if I had a genie, if I had a magic lamp, what would I wish for? And what I would wish for is that everyone in the world have empathy for everyone else. Period. Because that would change the world. So that's why I did that.
Nice.
Mark, now Michael here is in one of the most important roles of the entire franchise. It's just like such a poignant, important role, and I don't really know as much about where that came from because I didn't work directly with him on set. Can you tell us a bit more about the character and where it came from, the idea behind it?
Yeah, well, when I meet incredibly talented actors, I try to write roles for them, and not being a fool, I say, okay, I can utilize this astonishingly talented person, and that's true, of course, with Bob and Doug and everyone I'm working with. I mean, I don't know how you got in under the wire, Ryan, but
Elaine likes me.
Yes. And by the way, we when we shot on Sunday, he had a line to another actor saying, "We're Space Command." They're in a very difficult situation, and for one take, he went, "We're Space Command."
Oh yeah.
It was a tip of my hat to Space Patrol in the 50s, and we may use that take, Ryan.
No, I shouldn't have. I had to do. Okay,
Yeah.
just real quick.
Yes.
I had to do one. We had a long day, and the line is, "Don't worry, we'll crack it. We're Space Command, right?" And I was like, okay, I have to do just one take where I say Space Command because that's how
Charming.
Mark says it. And I meant it for the blooper reel. I hope you don't really consider that for the main thing. Anyway, please continue.
But to circle back to the question, Mike, it's funny because, both Mike and Bob are both in Space Command and in the new show that Rockne O'Bannon and I are creating, Sweet Haven. And so I like to work with the same actors over and over. Armin Shimmerman is another friend that I work with often, and of course Doug. And with Mike, it was I was having lunch with Mike, and I realized that he could play our hero's father, Ethan McDowell's father, and I wanted to make it a very troubled relationship, but you could see that they loved each other. But it was it was very much like my relationship with my father, where saying you were happy was very dangerous. I always joke that misery is safe; they can't take that away from you, and also saying I love you was like it was a power play. It was again another dangerous statement, and so I was very interested in writing about that relationship where they love each other and sort of just digging into that scar tissue on both sides. And the fun part was that Mike's character was a hero as well. And in the prequel, the prequel we did as an audio play and also as a graphic novel, you get to see 30 years earlier where he's the hero, and
right.
it's. Yeah, so I don't know if you wanted, and then in the pandemic episode we just did where everyone shot their own scenes, both Bob and Doug and Mike were in that 2-hour episode too. And all of this, by the way, can be seen on my YouTube channel, Mr. Sci-Fi. So when you're done watching all of Bob's content on the Bob Picardo 24-hour,
marathon,
all Bob all the time, you can come on Mr. Sci-Fi and watch the I think 5 hours of content on Space Command we've released so far. So,
Michael, had you and Mark met previous to this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mark's been a good friend of mine for many, many years. Helped me in my career. He's just been a great friend to me as I navigated the waters of Hollywood. I'm from New York, so Mark has always just been a really. He has a great generosity of spirit. And it's that translates also into his ability as a showrunner and a creator of his own studio. It's really he talks about empathy and he talks about people caring about each other, and I think that it's that force of compassion that you guys started talking about on that particular question that really fuels him. And when that happens, that's a special situation for the life of a project. It certainly has a lot to do with the interpersonal positivity that happens on set. But it also has to do with the fabric of the life of the project itself, whatever he's working on, because that energy is extremely positive. And what it does is it becomes very conducive to create pieces that have a heart, and pieces that are meaningful, and pieces that are that really make a difference in this genre. So I think that you know, that energy of compassion is really one of the basic ingredients of great art. It's one of the reasons that I keep doing. You know, I always tell him, I said, just tell me where you want me and what time to be there. You know, and we'll keep going. You know, so.
Yeah, you know, when I watch you, Michael, one of the feelings that I get above the overall fact of family, but it's more about transferring the knowledge of the older generation to the younger generation. And, you know, as a parent now, I'm watching my kid grow up, and I'm thinking, what kind of life lessons can I teach? And how much is too much for this age limit? You know, what can I say that's relatable and understandable for that age limit? And I felt like that's a lot of what you were conveying in your scenes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that you got that. You know, Ethan is a wonderful young actor. He really is a very, very dedicated and really present and very honest in terms of what he's doing. And so didn't have to go too far to really work with him. You know, it's just, you know, you share genuine impulses. If anything, he shows me up, you know. So,
well, I liked it when you told him to shut up and listen. You know? Stop talking. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice that you bring up Ethan McDowell, by the way. He is the lead of the series. Marc, you had quite the extensive process to find yourself a lead. Can you tell everybody about that? It sounds exhaustive.
Yeah. It was, well, you know, again, as I was saying earlier, or at least alluding to, my whole goal with Space Command, and then the Showrunners Network, which is this insanely large project that I'm now embarked upon that Space Command is part of. I'm remaking Hollywood into what I want it to be, whether it's the round table I run or the classes I've taught or any of these things. You know, it's always about Hollywood can be so toxic and so corrosive and so ill-mannered, among other things. You know, I mean, Jesus Christ, they don't return your calls. I mean, they don't act like a normal business. You know, I mean, most businesses, like, let's say you want to be a doctor, the steps are pretty clear. You go to medical school and you know, and then you hang out your shingle and you're a doctor. In Hollywood, it's very different. I mean, you have to be so scrappy and so inventive and so resourceful and find any which way to crack it, you know, and there's a huge element of luck, but there's also having good friends or people open doors. But there's also such craziness and such an anti-creative energy at work. And this is not Hollywood across the board. There are many wonderful people, and I've worked with many wonderful people. But because Space Command was funded by the fans, I mean, I've raised close to $2 million directly from the fans and selling investment shares and all of that. I have total freedom. And so I could do anything I want. Basically, I write it, or Elaine and I write it, you know, and we cast it, we direct it, rock and roll. I mean, you know, I don't have to ask permission from anybody. And so I knew I was going to be casting a number of name actors that I'd worked with before in many cases. And but I because so many of my friends are actors and I mentor so many young people, I was aware of what a struggle they have just to even get in the room, just to get visible at all. And I thought, and I remembered the great Scarlett O'Hara, the great search for Scarlett O'Hara, the talent search for her in Gone with the Wind, you know. And I thought, well, why don't we have a talent search? You know, Kickstarter has a lot of campaigns where you'll have maybe a walk-on or maybe a cameo, maybe we'll give them one line. I thought, well, why don't we have a talent search for two of the lead actors, two of the lead roles? So for Captain Kemmer and for Cadet Bradbury, anyone anywhere in the world could download the sides and shoot their own audition. So we got 7,000 inquiries, 1,200 videos. We got 1,200 video auditions, and we boiled it down to about 20, and then ended up casting, I think, 6 or 7 actors from those auditions. And even when we did the pandemic episode, Essex's sister, that was a casting. You know, someone in Atlanta sent in a tape, and we cast her. And so that's how we got Ethan. That's how we got Brian McClure, many of our actors. And you know, I just thought it'd be fun to do something different. And it worked out. And, you know, it's funny, Mike, when you were talking about, you know, acting, and you mentioned it too, Bob, what we're always looking for, Elaine and I, is, first of all, authenticity. Do I believe what they're doing, you know? And then the second thing is, are they interesting? You know, because some people can be authentic, but they're still, you know, making choices that don't make them, you know, your eyes slide off the screen, you know? And I mean, Bob and Mike and everyone we're working with, you know, is so fun to work with. And we want them all, we want to give them the opportunity. What we allow in Space Command, and also in the other series on the Showrunners Network, is we give actors something to work with, you know, and that was why it was very fun in the pandemic episode to be able to write monologues, you know, and two character scenes and 3 character scenes, but particularly the monologues that, you know, pretty much what you were doing, Mike, was mostly a monologue. Same with Barbara Bain, etc. And it was so fun to just watch an actor kick the shit out of something, you know, and you know, because normally in normal broadcast television you wouldn't do that, but the pandemic gave us that opportunity because no one was really able to be in the room with anybody else. So it was great fun.
You know, speaking
Bob,
of, please,
sorry.
Sirach, no, jump in.
I wanted to know, Bob, when you know, coming off of Star Trek and that being such a high level of standard for science fiction, are you reluctant to enter into sci-fi projects and say, you know, it has to be really, really good, it has to be really interesting, or I have to have faith that it's going to be done well? Are you more reluctant because of your experience on Star Trek?
It's a good question. You know, it's always about, it's about the material and about the role. And even if I don't, you know, even if I read the whole script and I think the script may have some problems, if I am in basic, if it's a comedy script, if it's still, if I still found it funny, or whatever it is. I mean, there's another project that I'm involved in on Kickstarter now, playing a character that I've done before, playing basically a villain character, an obsessive kind of, you know, villain character. I thought the overall project was interesting enough, and the animation they showed me good enough, because it's a mix of live action and animation, that I wanted to be part of it. I just shot something for a producer in Germany. I shot my own stuff. I didn't know you could shoot 4K on an iPhone before. So I shot I think I play the president of the universe or the president of the solar system or something in the future. And I shot it, you know, here. So it's, I've done a couple of COVID movies in the house where I play either a therapist or something who's trying to save some person who's having a really tough time coping with the isolation. And then I went down to LA 2 or 3 weeks ago to work on 2 different shows with very high COVID protocols. One of which I played a hypochondriac during the COVID pandemic. So that was great. I had 3 masks on while I was shooting. And hopefully people can recognize my voice. I literally had an N95 over an N95 and a face shield and a makeshift plastic bag body outfit and plastic gloves. So I was the safest person on set. But it's really about the material. And I also love to keep working. I had the advantage of going from Star Trek to working on one of our competitor franchises, Stargate Atlantis, which was a very different style show. The whole tone of the show is different. But I found that fun and different. Just the differences with Star Trek, the fact that it was more seat of the pants, that it was set in a secret science fiction, a secret program in the present day. So unlike Star Trek, where we're very careful to stay away from contemporary speech, anything that identifies it as 21st century, that show was, you know, with the tone of which had been set by Richard Dean Anderson, was a kind of science fiction that you're winking at the camera the whole time going, we're going to save the world in 43 minutes. So that was fun too, the breaking of the fourth wall all the time, which we didn't do on Star Trek, or rarely did on Star Trek. So I guess I just enjoy having the variety of stuff to do. And I did a musical on stage in New York. I was back on stage in New York for the first time in 40 years last spring, back when people could still go to the theaters. So I just like the variety most of all.
That's great. And again, this is where Bob is so versatile. I mean, it's so much fun writing for you, Bob. And I just realized, I was going through my head. Right now, I've written 4 roles for you. Okay, the first is, of course, Yusuf Sikander. Then you play another character that we introduced in the pandemic episode of Space Command named Deuce, that we'll be getting to down the road in season 1. Then you're playing Mira Furlan's husband in Sweet Haven, which is the show, that Mike and you and I are collaborating on. And then also you have a cameo as Johnny Cab in Space Command prequel.
Yeah, well,
Wait a second.
That's
Johnny
get
Cab
sued. Well, we get sued
Well,
if we can't say that.
We don't say what it is, but let's just say that there's a robot cab who Mr. Picardo was very, very kind to let us utilize his services.
That is awesome. Are you also going to be a high school basketball coach? Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I just wanted to say one thing about Bob. That scene that you did with Doug, just from an acting perspective, it was really, really beautifully done. And it's an honor to be working with you.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours too. I was glued to because of my dear friend Kate Mulgrew. I was glued the first several seasons to Orange is the New Black, where you had just the I loved your loved your character, loved your work. So
that was it. Okay.
So thank you very much. I appreciate it. But as I said, working with Doug Jones just makes everybody better.
So this is an interesting thing, because when we talk about that scene where you revealed the background on your wife, I wrote that scene not knowing if it would work. I really didn't, and I thought, well, worst case scenario, I'll just cut it. But you were so spectacular, and you did such a phenomenal job. It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire show, and but that was where I was just basically rolling the dice, because it's like, boy, this is a monologue, and it's and he's talking about characters we haven't met, and it's just, and it was like, and just you made magic. It was just wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that. That scene could not exist with another human character. The fact he only entitles himself to share that because he's talking to a machine that he just saved from the junk heap, I think.
Yes.
So I don't think he could ever share that with another person, and I think that's what made it. That's what was freeing about it in a way. It's almost like, I don't know. It gave me the character a permission that I don't think he would have taken otherwise.
That's right. And the idea very much was this: he never talks about this, never, never, never. And it's only this specific, unusual situation, because Doug, when I first met Doug, the way I met Doug was, I was writing a book with Guillermo del Toro a few years ago, and I won the Saturn Award, and I saw this tall, thin guy in this amazing Victorian jacket, and I went up to compliment him on the jacket, and it was Doug Jones. And so a few days later, we had lunch, and I was just amazed. First of all, you never get to see his face generally, and he has such a sensitive and delicate and wonderful face, and he had such this gentle quality. I mean, if you've ever been before the pandemic to a convention with him, he always grabs your face and hugs you or whatever. He's very, very loving. And I said, I'm going to write a role where, first of all, where we see your face, but secondly, where we really see your soul. And that was the whole idea, that this is a character who just has no guile at all, none. He's totally open-hearted, and I thought it was very fun to write that character and then see how your character and Mira and all these other characters, rise to the opportunity and the challenge that he offers. So it was really, really fun.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, there's a lucidity in his eyes. He really does a lot of expression through his eyes. And Bob, I want to say that in that scene, I think the directorial choice was to have you face front in the camera with kind of Doug in the background off to the left a little bit, but you were really in the front of the camera, and the lighting was in such a way that only like the little shimmer in your eyes was able to give off the feeling that you had. So I wanted to give a shout out to the director, who also played that well in that shot, because I felt like it was framed right for that moment for you to have that monologue as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole thing. Elaine and I direct together, and I always tell people that my directorial style is to go, honey, just she's the real director. But I do know well enough from reading books by really good directors, and also the work, that you don't get too busy. You let your actors have the window. You don't mess with it. You give them the room to do what they're so spectacular at, particularly with emotional moments. And in Mike's scenes with Ethan, there's that same quality of just, let's look at this guy. He's so interesting, and he's so complicated, and he's a loving man, and he's a heroic man, and he doesn't step back from challenges, but he's wonderful to have on your side, and very difficult to have in your, to be your dad or your husband or whatever. He's a handful. And so that's, I was very interested in because Space Command takes place over many generations, and we see the different generations of captains in Space Command, father to son to grandson to great grandson. I didn't want them all to be the same guy. They weren't all going to be James Kirk, and so I made it I made a very deliberate choice to have Mike's character be very different from Ethan's character, who's very different from Aaron Gaffey's character, who plays his Ethan's great grandson. So it's very interesting to see the different ways you can craft a character who's a hero, and that's actually a very fun challenge.
You see,
there aren't a lot of people that could put all this together, Mark. Together, I'll just say that.
Thank you, Mike. And just one thing I do want to mention is that I've alluded a little bit to the Showrunners Network, and I'll just say what that is. In my whole career, what I do is I set myself a challenge that's impossible, and then I pull it off, and and then I set a bigger one that's even crazier. So Space Command is crazy enough, to do your own science fiction show, without a studio or a network. But then I said, okay, let's do something called the Showrunners Network, which is 6 shows where I co-create 6 shows with 6 major showrunners, and we lay out the entire series, and we write the pilot scripts, and we shoot all 6 pilots and take it out as a slate of 6 shows to the buyers. So right now, the way it's stacking up is Space Command is in first position, Sweet Haven is in second. That's the show I'm creating with Rockneil Bannon, which ironically we came up with immediately before the pandemic, but it's about a world where a genetically altered disease kills everyone in the world under 60. And so the people 60 and above have to figure out how to save humanity. And Mike is one of our leads in it. He plays twins, interestingly enough. And Bob plays Mira Furlan's husband, and they have to decide whether or not they're going to be put into a fertility experiment and go through all of that stuff.
So you're going to have to age them a bit?
Yes. The age makeup is going to take hours, days.
Got it. And lots of makeup.
And Gates McFadden plays twins also. She played one of her characters will be Mike's love interest, and on and on. Barbara Bain is in it. It's a phenomenal project. And
Mark made an irresistible offer. Would you like to play a character who's still sexually active?
Yes.
So, absolutely, sure.
Yes. And it's one of the rare times I've had an actor insist on a nude scene. So.
Well,
that's great.
Okay, we're just about out of time here. There were like 10 jokes that popped in my head as soon as you said that, Mark, but I'm like, we got to move on.
Yeah.
But Michael, it was mentioned a bit ago about Miss Kate Mulgrew, who is a legend in Star Trek lore and other places. Have you noticed the Star Trek fandom that kind of came over to Orange is the New Black? Because I know that's how I found out about the show, and I know a lot of Star Trek fans found out about the show because of Kate Mulgrew pushing for it so much. did you notice the presence of Star Trek fandom surrounding Orange is the New Black, or did that just not really ever come up and you kind of have your own bubble?
I'm not very big on social media, you know. I'm not really into the whole thing, but I love Kate. Kate was so wonderful to work with. You know, we had a wonderful, wonderful run, and it was just such a, I don't know how to say it. I guess it was just so, it was such a great environment. She created such a great space for us to really be uh, very present with each other, and we were able to really get into a very beautiful sharing of what was happening between our two lives on screen. So much so that they kept writing for us, you know, and that's always a thing, right? But I love Kate. You know, again, just very privileged to be able to have worked with her, and hope I can do it again.
Mm.
Yeah, Michael, do you mind just saying you've reached Sirach's phone? Please leave a message, because your voice is so good to listen to. But I can just hear you talk all day.
Yeah. And again, when when I first got to know Mike, I mean, he has such a great gravitas, and it's so much fun. And I said, and it's funny because after we worked on Space Command, I said, I'm going to create a series around you. And one of the things that's fun, I was gonna say one of the things that's fun about being me is that there's so much bullshit in Hollywood. It's so nice when I'm able to be someone who I never say anything I don't mean. So, you know, when I said, okay, I'm going to write a role for you, you did. And I just
thought you were, I didn't think you were going to go through with it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I say that because of all the years, and Bob, you could probably, you know, people tell you a million things, you know, and say, hey, what happened to that? You know, I've been real lucky.
Yeah,
real lucky.
There's a lot more fun.
You being one of the big parts of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you deserve it. You're spectacularly talented, and quite frankly, I mean, for me, I love actors. I love working with actors. You know, Elaine was an actor before I knew her, and she's a terrific director as well and writer. But for me, you guys are all my partners. You're all my collaborators, and so I'm always amazed when people treat actors badly, because you guys are the ones who make it happen. And you know, I'm very grateful to have you guys in my life.
Yeah, Mark, I think you really should be congratulated for the work that you're doing. You're taking something which is this big infrastructure that's been really a monolith and a Goliath to try to break into Hollywood entertainment. It's very structured, and it's very difficult to crack into. But with the advent of different ways to share content and the internet and all kinds of things that have emerged from that, the power has started slowly to become back into the people's hands and able to get their own voice out there without the overlords telling them what they can and can't do. So I want to commend you for that as well, because, you know, that's something that's going to really change the way productions are done going forward. And you're one of the pioneers getting that done.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. I mean, you know, when I wrote the Twilight Zone companion, I got deep into the 50s, and when Rod and those guys, you know, Patty Chayefsky and Reginald Rose were creating television, and it feels very much like it does now, because they didn't know what the rules were, so they made the rules, and they were able to create an amazing body of work, particularly Serling, of course, and you know, and so I feel like I'm, you know, on the shoulders of giants, and I'm in part of a great tradition. But yes, I thank God for the internet. I thank God for crowdfunding, all of these wonderful tools. You know, I would not go back to the old days in my own career. I mean, as much as I enjoyed working on all these wonderful shows that I worked for at the studios and the networks, I'm having the best time of my life right now.
Last quick thing before we run, Mark, you wanted to throw a quick word out to the vendors in our awesome promenade for Virtual Trek Con.
So this is my message to all of you who are enjoying the content we're putting out on Virtual Trek Con 2. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sirach, for doing this. But you know, all the money, all of us are saving a great deal of money, not going to the movies, not doing all the things we normally do, not, you know, and so if you've got some change in your pockets or in your sofa or whatever, throw some money the vendor's way. I mean, you can certainly afford to get, the Bob Picardo action figure with, with all of the moving parts and so forth. So, absolutely help the vendors out. I promise you there'll be some show, something. I mean, you could have the action figure of Bob's character from Star Trek Voyager battle the action figure of Bob's character from Stargate or whatever, and so just.
I agree with Mark, and I'd like to challenge you to find an action figure of mine from Star Trek that is not packaged with one of my hands directly poised over my crotch. Every single one of them has one hand over my crotch. There's a lot of people in China thought it was very funny to make the bald guy look very lonely.
Oh, I thought it was just the toy that self-censors.
Well, there's, we've all told that action figure joke that has been told at a million conventions, but I'll repeat it for you anyway. The most exciting thing about having an action figure is you can finally play with yourself in public. We've all told that joke. But mine really looks like it's taking itself very seriously.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to call it a get no action figure. I was just trying to make Michael laugh. Finally, it worked. We did it. Anyway, we do have to run. Michael, it's been amazing. I'm looking forward to all of your secret future projects, some of which we've discussed, and some are very, very important things. I really hope they see the light of day. Bob, thank you always for joining us, for making us laugh on Star Trek, on Wonder Years, on Total Recall, etc. And Mr. Marc Zicree, thanks for, always keeping us entertained. You give us a lot of stuff on YouTube. You give us a lot of stuff that's being pitched to Netflix. You give a lot of people jobs, which I think is one of the most important things in the world, is to create these little bubbles of employment.
Yeah.
Sirach, any final words?
I just want to say thank you to the guests and everybody out there to go check out Space Command.
Yeah.
And follow up on the network that you've created. What was the name of that again, Mark?
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's called Mr. Sci-Fi, and it's not just the Space Command stuff. I do commentaries about science fiction and all sorts of stuff. And so it's the whole range of everything we love.
Including Twilight Zone.
All
right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much, everybody at home. You heard Mark. Go check out the Promenade and help some people out. That's what this is for. And everybody else, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Great to see you.